3 miscarriages, no answers. A mirror that smiled back with her best friend's face. And she never knew. Not that morning. Not for a long time. The story really began years earlier in a dusty secondary school compound in Benin City, where two 18-year-old young women sat under a mango tree, sharing dreams that tasted sweeter than the fruit above their heads. Amara and Chisom had been inseparable since Form 1. They wore their hair in the same tight cornrows, shared their lunch money when one forgot hers at home, and stayed up late during school socials, whispering about boys and futures, bright enough to blind them. To anyone watching, they were sisters, born to different mothers, but even then, something dark had already taken root in Chisholm's heart, something she watered in secret, with every blessing that seemed to fall into Amara's lap without effort. When they both gained admission to the University of Lagos, Chisom's mother threw a party. Amara's mother brought jollof rice and 3 bottles of malt drink. The two women hugged and thanked God for keeping their daughters together. In the corner of the room, Chisom watched Amara laugh with some relatives, her face open and bright, and felt that familiar twist in her belly. The jealousy grew legs during the university years. It walked beside Chisom everywhere, whispered in her ear during lectures, sat with her at night when she scrolled through Amara's social media, and saw opportunities blooming like wildflowers. An internship at a bank, a modeling gig for a local makeup brand, an invitation to a youth conference in Abuja. Small things, really, but they accumulated like debt. Chisom, you won't believe what happened, Amara would say, bouncing into their shared hostel room with news of another open door. And Chisom would smile, hug her, celebrate with her, all while that thing inside her grew teeth. When Amara interviewed for a position at an advertising firm, Chisom called the hiring manager, pretending to be a former employer with concerns about Amara's work ethic. The job offer never came. When a family friend promised to connect Amara with contacts in the oil and gas sector, Chisom accidentally on purpose gave Amara the wrong date for the networking event. When Amara finally met a decent man named Tunde, who looked at her like she hung the moon, Chisom told him lies, sweet and poisonous, about seeing Amara with other men. Tunde stopped calling. Amara cried for 2 weeks. Chisom brought her ice cream and tissues and made sympathetic sounds, while inside, that dark thing poured with satisfaction. The worst part was that Amara never knew. She told Chisom everything, every hope, every fear, every secret dream. She borrowed money from her uncle to help when Chisom's mother fell ill. She stayed up all night helping Chisom prepare for job interviews. She prayed for Chisom with the kind of faith that moved mountains, never knowing that the biggest obstacle in her own life was the friend kneeling beside her, saying Amen. They were 25 when everything changed. By then, they had moved to Lagos, sharing a small flat in Surulere that smelled like coconut oil and ambition. Amara was working as a sales girl in a boutique on the island, coming home with swollen feet and stories about rude customers. Chisom worked as a receptionist at a law firm, a job she had gotten through her own merit for once, though she told people it was because of her excellent interview skills, and not because she was the only applicant. On a Wednesday evening, Chisom received a call that her uncle had died in their village near Warri. She needed to travel immediately for the burial arrangements. She packed a bag, her mind already occupied with family politics and inheritance whispers, barely paying attention when Amara hugged her goodbye. Travel safe, my dear. Call me when you get there. I will. Keep the house locked. You know how these Lagos boys are. Amara laughed. As if any boy is looking for me with this my work schedule. Go, be careful on the road. By Saturday morning, Amara's phone buzzed with an email that made her sit down on the bathroom floor where she had been cleaning. It was an interview invitation from a multinational company with headquarters in Abuja. They wanted to see her on Monday for a position in their international relations department. The salary mentioned made her dizzy. She tried calling Chisom immediately, fingers trembling so hard she nearly dropped her phone. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. The network in the village was probably terrible, she reasoned. She sent several text messages, each one more excited than the last. Then made a decision. She would go to Abuja for the interview. She had to. Opportunities like this didn't come twice. She would tell Chisom everything when she got back. Amara borrowed money from her boutique manager for transport and a hotel room. On the bus to Abuja, she watched the landscape change and prayed harder than she had ever prayed. Please God, just this once, let something good stay. The interview was in a glass building that reflected the sky. The panel consisted of three people who smiled at her and asked questions she somehow knew how to answer. It was as if her tongue had turned gold. Words flowed from her like honey. She told them about her degree in international relations, her experience in customer service, her willingness to learn. She didn't tell them about the nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she would ever be more than a shop girl, if her degree would ever mean something. 2 hours later, the lead interviewer, a woman with kind eyes and grey streaked hair, smiled at her. Miss Amara, we would like you to start tomorrow. We have an accelerated training program for selected candidates who will be joining our team in Toronto, Canada. Do you have an international passport? No, ma, but I can get one quickly. Good. We'll assist with the process. Welcome aboard. She walked out of that building and stood on the Abuja street, letting the sun hit her face. Then she cried, not sad tears, but the kind that wash away years of disappointment and make room for hope. She tried calling Chisom from the hotel room that night. Still off. She sent more messages, her fingers flying across the screen, trying to fit all her joy into little blue bubbles of text. She imagined Chisom's face when she finally heard the news, how they would scream together, how Chisom would say, I told you your time was coming. The next day, she returned for orientation. The day after, they began her passport processing. A week later, just as they had promised, she was on a plane to Toronto with 6 other new employees, watching Lagos disappear beneath clouds, feeling like her life had finally begun. In Toronto, everything was cold and clean and impossibly organized. The training was intense but manageable. Her colleagues were friendly. Her apartment, provided by the company, had heating that actually worked and water that ran hot whenever she wanted. She sent pictures to her mother, to her siblings, to everyone whose number she had, except Chisom, whose line remained stubbornly off. 2 weeks into her new life, she began to worry. What had happened? Was Chisom okay? The burial should have been over by now. She tried the number again and again, until one evening, desperate, she used her new Canadian number to call. Chisom picked up on the second ring. Hello? Chisom. Oh my God, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Are you okay? What happened? There was a pause. Then, Chisom's voice, careful and measured. Amara, this number is strange. Where are you calling from? That's what I've been trying to tell you. So much has happened. I'm in Canada. I got a job with this big company, and they flew me here for training, and everything happened so fast. And I tried to call you, but your number wasn't going through, and Amara heard herself babbling and stopped, laughing. I'm sorry, I'm just so happy to hear your voice. Are you back in Lagos? How was the burial? I'm back, Canada. Wow, that's that's amazing, Amara. I'm so happy for you. But even through the phone, across continents and oceans, Amara could hear something off in her friend's tone. She pushed the thought away. It was probably just exhaustion from the burial and family stress. I know it's crazy. I still can't believe it myself. The pay is good, oh Chisom. Very good. I'll be able to send money home, help my mother, even save small. That's wonderful. Listen, I need to go. We'll talk later, okay? Okay. I love you, my dear. I've missed you so much. Me too. Bye. The line went dead, and Amara stared at her phone. That old familiar feeling of something being not quite right settling in her stomach. But she was too happy, too overwhelmed with her new life to examine it closely. She would make it up to Chisom when she visited home. Maybe she could even help Chisom get a job with the company. Yes, that would be perfect. In Lagos, Chisom sat in their flat, staring at the wall. Canada. Of course Amara would somehow leap from selling clothes in a boutique to living in Canada. Of course, the world would just hand her everything while Chisom scraped and clawed for every small victory. The rage that filled her was biblical. It burned through her chest and down her arms until her hands shook. She had missed it. She had been away in the village dealing with family drama and burial arrangements, and in that small window of time, Amara had slipped through her fingers and landed in another country entirely. The next morning, Chisom called in sick to work. She took a taxi to Izale Echo, to a street where the buildings leaned toward each other like gossiping old women. She found a native doctor in a room that smelled of incense and something darker, something that made her stomach turn. The man was older than her father would have been, with tribal marks cutting deep lines down his cheeks. He listened to her story without expression, then named his price. It will be expensive. To reach someone that far away, across the water, the medicine must be very strong. Chisom paid. She had been saving for a new laptop. But this was more important. She watched as he performed rituals she didn't understand, as he gave her instructions in Yoruba mixed with English, as he promised her that within 3 months, Amara would be back in Nigeria with nothing to show for her foreign adventure. But she must not die, Chisom said suddenly, surprising herself. I don't want her dead. Just brought down. Level. You understand? The native doctor smiled, revealing teeth, stained red with kola nut. I understand. You want her to know suffering. Death would be too quick, too kind. Yes, Chisom whispered, and hated herself a little, and paid the money anyway. 3 months later, almost to the day, Amara's supervisor called her into the office with an expression of deep regret. There had been complaints, he said, accusations of missing documents, mishandled files, inappropriate conduct. An investigation would be conducted, but in the meantime, given that she was still on probation, they had no choice but to terminate her employment. Her work visa would be revoked. I don't understand. What complaints? I've been doing my work. I've been careful. I'm sorry, Miss Amara. The decision is final. We'll arrange your flight back to Nigeria. She was on a plane 3 days later, her 6 months in Canada collapsed into a fever dream she couldn't quite believe had happened. At the Lagos airport, she stood with her single suitcase and felt the humid air wrap around her like a punishment. Her mother cried when she called to say she was back, not tears of joy. Chisom picked her up from the airport, all sympathy and hugs and soft words. These foreign companies, they're all the same. They use Nigerians and throw them away. Don't worry, my dear. You'll find something else. You're strong. You always land on your feet. Amara nodded, too numb to speak, and let herself be driven home to the flat that now felt like a cage. The jobs that came after were nothing like Canada. She sold recharge cards on the street. She worked as a waitress in a buka. She helped her cousin's wife braid hair for small money. Each day felt like walking through sand, every step exhausting and pointless. Chisom watched it all with outward sympathy and inward satisfaction. That dark thing inside her, finally quiet, finally fed. Then Amara met Chike. It happened on a slow Tuesday afternoon at the Bukka where she worked as a waitress. He came in for a late lunch. A businessman who dealt in importation with kind eyes and a steady presence. When he asked for her number, she almost laughed. But something in his face told her he was serious. They dated for 3 months before Chisom found out. When Amara finally introduced them, Chisom took one look at Chike's expensive watch, his new model car, the way he looked at Amara like she was precious, and made a calculation. If she sabotaged this relationship like the others, Amara might start to notice the pattern. People were only blind for so long, but if she let it proceed, if she appeared supportive and loving, if she positioned herself as the best friend who was there for everything, well, there were other ways to poison a well, deeper ways, more painful ways. He seems wonderful, she told Amara that night, hugging her tight. I'm so happy for you. You deserve this. And Amara, sweet trusting Amara, beamed and said, I knew you would like him. I'm so glad. I want you to be my chief bridesmaid when the time comes. Nothing would make me happier, Chisom said, and meant it in a way Amara would never understand. The wedding was beautiful. Amara wore white lace and orange blossoms, and when she said her vows, her voice never wavered. Chike cried, which made the women in the audience sigh. Chisom stood beside Amara in a blue gown, holding her bouquet, smiling for the cameras. At the reception, she gave a speech that made everyone laugh and tear up. I've known Amara since we were just girls, she said, and I can tell you that God saved his best work for her. She has the kindest heart of anyone I know. Chike, you're getting a treasure. Take care of her. The applause was thunderous. Amara mouthed, I love you, from the head table. Chisom blew her a kiss and thought about the mirror wrapped and waiting in her car. She gave it to them that evening as the party was winding down. I wanted you to have something special, she said as Amara unwrapped the gold paper. For your new home, so you can always see how beautiful you are. It was a standing mirror, nearly 6 feet tall, framed in dark wood, carved with patterns that looked traditional, but weren't quite anything Amara recognized. It must have cost a fortune. Chisom, this is too much. Nothing is too much for you. Please, I want you to have it. Amara hugged her, and over her shoulder, Chisom looked at Chike and smiled. He smiled back, having no idea that the mirror had been prepared in that dark room in Izale Echo, that it was now a window between their home and Chisom's. The mirror stood in the master bedroom of Amara and Chike's new home in Lekki. Amara loved it. She would admire her outfit in it before leaving the house, check her makeup, practice her smile. She never noticed how, sometimes late at night, the surface seemed to ripple like water. She never saw the shadows that moved in it when the room was empty. But in her own room across town, Chisom saw everything. The native doctor had given her a smaller mirror, told her the two were connected. When she looked into hers and spoke the right words, she could see through Amara's mirror as if she was standing in the room. She watched them eat dinner, watched them argue about small things, watched them laugh, watched them make love. When Amara became pregnant, 3 months into the marriage, Chisom watched that too. She saw the positive pregnancy test, heard Amara scream of joy, watched Chike spin her around the bedroom. That night, she returned to the native doctor. I want to destroy the pregnancy. It will cost more than before. I don't care. The ritual required her blood this time. Drops of it on a piece of paper inscribed with symbols, burned and turned to ash. The ash mixed with things she didn't want to identify. He gave her a small pouch. When you see her next, put this in her drink. The pregnancy will be gone within a week. Chisom invited Amara for lunch the following Sunday. She made egusi soup, Amara's favorite, and mixed the powder into her glass of zobo when she wasn't looking. They ate and talked and laughed, and Amara mentioned that she had started feeling queasy in the mornings, but in a good way, the way her mother had described pregnancy, nausea. 3 days later, Amara called her, sobbing so hard Chisom could barely understand the words. The baby, I lost. There was so much blood. Chisom, why? I'm coming right now. I'm on my way. Hold on, my dear. Just hold on. She held Amara in the hospital room while her friend's body expelled the remnants of hope. She brought her home, helped her into bed, made her tea. Chiki stood in the doorway, looking helpless and broken, and Chisom patted his shoulder. She's strong. You both are. You'll try again. They did try again. Amara got pregnant 4 months later. Chisom performed the same ritual. Another miscarriage at 8 weeks. The third pregnancy lasted longer, almost 4 months. Amara had been cautious, almost superstitious, not wanting to celebrate too early. But when she made it past the first trimester, she let herself hope. She bought a tiny pair of shoes, hid them in a drawer, took them out sometimes just to look at them and imagine. Chisom used a stronger poison this time. The native doctor warned her that it might make Amara very ill, might even endanger her life. I don't care, Chisom heard herself say. Do it. But she did care, she realized later, when she got the call that Amara had collapsed and was in the ICU. She felt something like fear. When she rushed to the hospital and saw her friend, pale and hooked up to machines, she felt something that might have been remorse trying to crack through the dark thing inside her. Amara survived, but the baby didn't. The doctor said it was unexplained. These things happen sometimes. They ran tests and found nothing medically wrong, just terrible, inexplicable luck. Chike began to look older. The light in Amara's eyes dimmed to something barely visible, and Chisom visited them every week, brought food, offered prayers, and went home to look through her mirror at the devastation she had caused. 2 years after the wedding, Amara was a shadow. She moved through her days like someone underwater, slow and disconnected. She had stopped talking about babies, stopped talking about much at all. Chike held her at night and felt like he was holding a ghost. It was Chike who insisted she see a different kind of doctor. Not a medical one, but a spiritual one. Amara had resisted at first. She wasn't superstitious, didn't believe in such things. But what did belief matter when three babies were dead and the doctors couldn't explain why? The prophet they visited was a small woman in Ikeja who spoke in a quiet voice and saw with eyes that looked through you instead of at her. She took one look at Amara and said, "Someone close to you is destroying your life. Someone you trust. Someone who smiles with you and plots against you." Amara's laugh was bitter. That's what they all say. It's always a close friend or family member. It's never just bad luck. Look around your home, the prophet continued, as if Amara hadn't spoken. Something was brought into your house. A gift. Through it, your enemy watches and walks. Chike was the one who took it seriously. That night, he walked through their home with new eyes, looking at every object, every decoration, everything that had been given to them. His gaze landed on the mirror. "Your friend Chisom gave you that." "So? She gives me lots of things. She's my best friend." "When did the problem start?" Amara opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. The miscarriages had started after the wedding, after the mirror, but that was coincidence, surely. Chisom had been there for her through everything. Chisom had held her while she cried. Chisom loved her. But there was a tiny voice in the back of her mind, small and persistent, reminding her of other things. Jobs she had lost for no clear reason. Relationships that had ended mysteriously. Opportunities that had slipped away. And Chisom had always been there, always close, always knowing everything. "No," she said aloud. "No, you're wrong." But that night, she couldn't sleep. She lay beside Chike and stared at the mirror in the darkness. And for the first time, she looked at it with suspicion instead of vanity. The next day, while Chike was at work, she called a pastor her mother had recommended once. He came to the house with a Bible, an anointing oil, and a certainty that reminded her of the prophet's quiet voice. He walked through each room, praying until he reached the bedroom. He stopped in front of the mirror like he had hit a wall. "This," he said, "this is the problem." He wouldn't touch it directly. Instead, he had Amara cover it with a cloth while he prayed, then instructed Chick, when he came home, to remove it from the house and destroy it. "Burn it," he said. "Break it and burn the pieces. Don't just throw it away. Destroy it completely." That evening, Chick carried the mirror out to their small backyard. Amara watched from the window as he smashed it with a hammer, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces that caught the dying light. He gathered the frame and the fragments and set them on fire, adding kerosene to make sure everything burned. As the flames consumed the mirror, Chisom, across town in her own flat, screamed. The small mirror in her room had exploded without warning, shards of glass flying across the room, one piece cutting her cheek deep enough to bleed. But worse than the physical pain was the sudden spiritual backlash, like a door slamming shut on her fingers, like all the darkness she had sent out returning home at once. She collapsed on her floor, blood running down her face, and felt something break inside her that had nothing to do with glass. The sickness started that night. By morning, Chisom's body was on fire with fever. Her skin erupted in boils that wept and wouldn't heal. Her hair began to fall out in clumps. The doctors couldn't explain it, just like they couldn't explain Amara's miscarriages. They gave her antibiotics that didn't work, admitted her to the hospital, ran tests that showed nothing. Her mother came from Benin City, took one look at her, and knew. What did you do? She asked quietly. Chisom, weak and in pain, told her everything. Her mother wept. You need to confess. You need to tell your friend what you've done and beg for forgiveness. It's the only way to stop this. But Chisom was stubborn, even now. She will hate me. She should hate you. You've earned it. But maybe she'll forgive you. And maybe that will be enough. It took another week of suffering before Chisom broke. The boils had spread to her hands, her feet, her scalp. She couldn't eat without pain, couldn't sleep. The fever made her see things in the corners of the room, dark shapes with teeth. She called Amara from the hospital. I need to see you. Please, I need to tell you something. Amara almost didn't go. After destroying the mirror, she had felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from her shoulders. She didn't want to see Chisom right now, didn't want to think about the possibility that the prophet and the pastor had been right. But Chike encouraged her. Go, hear what she has to say. You'll regret it if you don't. In the hospital room, Amara barely recognized her friend. Chisom looked like she had aged 20 years in 2 weeks. Her face was gaunt, covered in sores, her eyes sunken and desperate. Amara, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then she told her everything. The sabotaged jobs, the ruined relationships, the deportation from Canada, the poisoned pregnancies, the mirror. All of it spilled out like poison from a lanced wound, ugly and painful and unstoppable. Amara stood there and felt the world rearrange itself around this new truth. Her best friend, her sister, the person she had trusted most in the world, a smile with a knife behind it. 25 years of friendship built on lies and hidden hatred. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't curse. She just looked at Chisom, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. Why? She asked, finally. Chisom tried to answer, tried to explain about jealousy and inadequacy and that dark thing inside her that had grown too large to control. But the words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. There was no good reason. There never had been. Amara turned and walked out of the room. She walked out of the hospital. She got into her car and drove home and sat in her living room with Chike and cried for 3 hours straight. Not for the lost jobs or the lost babies, but for the lost friendship, for the innocence she would never get back, for the part of her that had trusted without question. I can't forgive her, she said to Chike. I know I should. I know that's what good people do. But I can't. Then don't, he said simply. Not everything can be forgiven. Chisom got worse before she got better. The sickness lasted for months. She lost her job, lost her flat, moved back to Benin City to live with her mother, where she slowly, painfully recovered. The boils healed, leaving scars. Her hair grew back thin and patchy. She lived, but in the way that barely counted as living. Amara blocked her number, deleted every photo, removed every trace of their friendship from her life, like cutting out a cancer. For a year, she told people she had no friends, didn't want any, couldn't trust any. People are vipers, she would say. They smile and bite you. Chike was patient with her grief and her anger and her fear. He didn't push her to forgive or move on or be the bigger person. He just loved her, steady and constant, until slowly, very slowly, she started to come back to herself. 18 months after the mirror burn, Amara missed her period. She didn't tell anyone, not even Chike. She took a pregnancy test alone in the bathroom, and watched the two lines appear and felt terror instead of joy. But weeks passed and the pregnancy held. She saw a doctor who confirmed everything was progressing normally. She made it past the first trimester, then the second. Her belly swelled with life that stayed, that grew, that kicked and moved and seemed determined to exist. At 5 months, she finally told Chike. He cried and held her and thanked God. At 7 months, they learned she was carrying triplets. 3 babies, 3 miracles, 3 chances to replace what had been stolen. Amara gave birth on a Tuesday morning. 3 tiny perfect humans with Chike's nose and her eyes. 2 boys and a girl. She held them and counted their fingers and toes and felt something shift inside her. Some last piece of darkness, leaving to make room for this overwhelming light. In Benin City, Chisom heard about the triplets through someone's Facebook post. She saw the pictures of Amara, glowing with motherhood, Chike grinning like a fool, the 3 babies swaddled and sleeping. She stared at the photos for a long time, then closed the laptop and sat in silence. She had wanted to destroy Amara, to pull her down, to make her suffer. And she had succeeded, for a while. But looking at those pictures, at the evidence of Amara's survival and triumph, Chisom understood that she had actually destroyed herself. She had traded friendship for jealousy, love for hatred, and ended up alone with scars that would never fully fade. Some poisons, she realized too late, killed the person who administered them. Amara never spoke to Chisom again. She raised her children with Chike in their home in Lekki, where a different mirror now hung in the bedroom, just an ordinary mirror that reflected only what was real. She made new friends eventually, though she was careful now, guarded in ways she had never been before. She had learned that not everyone who smiled at you wished you well, that some people carried darkness and called it love. But she also learned that good things could still happen, that miracles were possible even after devastation, that the right person would stand beside you when everything fell apart and help you build something new from the ruins. On the triplets' first birthday, as she watched them smash their tiny hands into chocolate cake and laugh with pure joy, she thought briefly about Chisom, wondered where she was, if she was okay, if she had found peace. Then one of the babies squealed, and Chike kissed her temple, and she let the thought go, like releasing a balloon into the sky, watching it drift away until it disappeared completely. Some stories don't end with forgiveness or reconciliation. Some stories end with survival and moving forward and choosing your own peace over someone else's redemption. Amara had lost much to learn that lesson, but standing in her kitchen, surrounded by love and laughter and new life, she knew the price had been worth it. Please like, share, and subscribe for more beautiful tales. I am Zana. See you in the next story.